The rain drummed against Melinda's car window as she sat in the parking lot, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt lower over her face, watching the warm glow spilling from the restaurant windows across the street. Inside that cozy Italian place where she and Trevor had shared their first date 2 years ago, her fiancé was laughing with another woman. Not just any woman. Natasha. 3 hours earlier, Trevor had called to cancel their anniversary dinner. "Baby, I'm so sorry." His voice had been smooth, apologetic. "Family emergency. My mom needs me tonight." Rain check. She'd believed him. God, she'd actually felt sorry for him, worried about his family. She'd even offered to come with him to support him through whatever crisis had emerged. But he'd been quick to shut that down. No. It's complicated family stuff. I'll handle it alone." Now, watching him through the restaurant window, Melinda felt her world tilt on its axis. Trevor wasn't handling any family emergency. He was very much handling Natasha's hand across the table, while his parents sat across from them, beaming like they were watching their son with the woman of their dreams. Melinda's phone buzzed. A text from Trevor, still dealing with family stuff. "Miss you. Love you." The lie burned in her chest like acid. She'd followed him here on impulse, something nagging at her after his call. Trevor had been distant lately, always on his phone, always working late, always having mysterious family obligations that never quite made sense. Tonight, when he'd canceled their special dinner, something inside her had snapped. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but she'd grabbed her keys and driven to his apartment, only to see him leaving in his best suit. The same suit he'd worn to propose to her 6 months ago. Through the window, she watched Trevor's father raise his wine glass. Even from across the street, she could see the joy on the older man's face, the way Trevor's mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. This wasn't a casual dinner. This was a celebration. Melinda's hands shook as she pulled out her phone and zoomed in, taking photos through the window. The evidence was right there. Trevor, the man who'd promised to marry her, to build a life with her, sitting with his ex-girlfriend like they were the happy couple. Like Melinda didn't exist. She zoomed closer and her blood turned to ice. Trevor was sliding a ring across the table to Natasha. The same style ring he'd given Melinda. The same jewelry store bag she'd seen in his car last week, the one he'd claimed was a surprise for her. Natasha squealed. Melinda could see her mouth forming the words even through the glass. Trevor's parents stood up, rushing around the table to embrace them both. His mother was crying happy tears, pulling Natasha into a tight hug like she was welcoming her long-lost daughter home. The same mother who had been cold and distant with Melinda every time they'd met. The same parents who always seemed to find excuses not to include her in family gatherings. Now she knew why. A couple walked past her car, and Melinda ducked lower, not wanting to be seen. But she couldn't look away from the scene unfolding across the street. She had to know more. She had to understand how deep this betrayal went. Pulling her hood tighter, she got out of her car and crossed the street, staying in the shadows. The restaurant had large windows, and she could position herself behind a parked truck where she could hear but not be seen. "I'm so proud of you, son," Trevor's father was saying, his voice carrying through the night air. "Natasha is perfect for you. She always was. I never understood why you broke up with her in the first place," his mother added, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank God you came to your senses." Melinda pressed her back against the truck, feeling like she might be sick. "It took me too long to realize what I had." Trevor's voice was warm, loving in a way that made Melinda's chest ache. "I was distracted by other things. But Natasha, she's the love of my life. She always has been." "What about that other girl?" his father asked. "The one with all the money. Mindy? Melody?" "Melinda," Trevor corrected, and Melinda's heart stopped. She's been useful. Very useful. Like a walking ATM, really. But she was never serious. Just convenient while I figured out how to win Natasha back." The laughter that followed was like a knife to Melinda's heart. "You're terrible," Natasha giggled, but she didn't sound upset. She sounded delighted. "That poor girl probably thinks you're going to marry her." "She does," Trevor confirmed, and Melinda could hear the smirk in his voice. "She's been paying for everything too. The ring, this dinner, even the apartment deposit. She thinks we're building a future together. Really, she's just been funding my real future. With you." More laughter. His parents were laughing too, like Melinda's pain was the best joke they'd heard all year. "How long are you going to keep that charade up?" his mother asked. "Just until after the wedding," Trevor said casually, like he was discussing the weather. "I need her to pay for the honeymoon too. And the new car. After that, I'll break it off. Tell her I need space or something." Women always buy that. You're brilliant, Natasha purred. Using her money to fund our life together. It's almost poetic. Melinda's legs felt weak. She slid down the side of the truck until she was crouching behind it, her whole body shaking. 2 years. 2 years of her life, her love, her money, her dreams. All of it had been a lie. She thought about all the time she'd paid for dinner because Trevor was between paychecks. The vacation to Hawaii she'd funded because he wanted to surprise her. The expensive watch she'd bought him for his birthday. The rent she'd been covering because he was investing in his future. He'd been investing in his future. Just not with her. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Trevor. Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. We need to talk about the wedding planning. The wedding planning. Their wedding that would never happen because he was planning a different wedding entirely. Melinda took a shaky breath and stood up, her decision crystallizing like ice in her veins. Trevor thought she was useful? Like a walking ATM? He thought she was convenient and naive and easy to manipulate? He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. She pulled out her phone and started recording, capturing every word of their celebration, every laugh at her expense, every detail of their cruel deception. Evidence. She would need evidence for what came next. Because Trevor had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated her. Melinda wasn't just some convenient source of money. She was a successful business analyst with a sharp mind and connections throughout the city. She knew how to plan, how to strategize, how to execute complex projects. And now she had a new project. Destroying the man who thought he could destroy her. As she listened to them toast their engagement with wine she'd unknowingly paid for, Melinda felt something cold and determined settle in her chest. She'd been played, used, humiliated. But she wasn't broken. She was angry. And Trevor was about to discover that a walking ATM could do a lot more than just dispense cash. She could dispense justice. Melinda drove home in a daze, her mind spinning with everything she'd witnessed. The recording on her phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, each cruel word echoing in her head. She pulled into her apartment complex and sat in her car for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to process the magnitude of Trevor's betrayal. When she finally made it inside, she poured herself a glass of wine with shaking hands and sat at her kitchen table, phone in front of her. She played the recording back 3 times, each replay driving the knife deeper into her heart. Like a walking ATM, really? That poor girl probably thinks you're going to marry her. Using her money to fund our life together. It's almost poetic. Her doorbell rang at 11 p.m. She knew it was Trevor before she even looked through the peephole. There he stood, flowers in hand, that charming smile on his face that had once made her heart flutter. Now it made her stomach turn. She opened the door, forcing herself to appear normal. Hey baby. How's your mom? Trevor stepped inside and kissed her cheek, the same lips that had been calling her a convenient fool 3 hours ago. She's better. Thanks for understanding about tonight. I know how much you were looking forward to our dinner. The lies flowed so smoothly from his mouth. Melinda wondered how many times he'd lied to her face over the past 2 years. How many family emergencies had actually been dates with Natasha. Of course, she managed, accepting the flowers. Family comes first. You're amazing, Trevor said, pulling her close. That's why I love you so much. Well, the word felt like a slap. She let him hold her, let him kiss her forehead, all while her mind raced with plans for revenge. Actually, Trevor continued, settling onto her couch like he owned the place, I need to talk to you about something. The wedding. Here it comes, Melinda thought. The setup for whatever new financial demand he had planned. I've been thinking we should have a destination wedding, Trevor said, his eyes bright with fake enthusiasm. Somewhere tropical. Really romantic. What do you think? That sounds expensive, Melinda replied carefully. Trevor's face shifted into his practiced expression of mild disappointment. Well, yeah, but it's our special day. My parents have always dreamed of their son having a beach wedding. And you know I'm still paying off those student loans. Student loans that Melinda now realized probably didn't exist, just like everything else about their relationship. How much are we talking about? She asked. Maybe 50,000? 60? I know it's a lot, but you're so good with money and your business is doing so well. He trailed off, giving her that puppy dog look that used to melt her heart. $50,000. To fund a wedding that would never happen, for a honeymoon he'd be taking with another woman. Let me think about it, Melinda said. Trevor's face fell slightly. Usually, she agreed to his requests immediately. Okay, but we should probably book soon if we want somewhere good. He spent the night, and Melinda lay awake beside him, listening to him sleep peacefully while her mind churned with fury. This man had been using her as his personal bank account while planning his real life with someone else. He slept like a baby, completely unburdened by guilt or conscience. The next morning, after Trevor left for work, and who knew where he really went, Melinda called in sick and spent the day doing research. She started with their finances, pulling up every bank statement, every credit card bill, every transaction from the past 2 years. The picture that emerged made her sick to her stomach. Trevor had been systematically draining her accounts. The emergency car repair that cost $3,000 the same week Natasha had posted photos on social media of her new designer handbags. The family medical bills he'd needed help with right around the time Natasha had taken a vacation to Paris. The business investment opportunity he'd begged her to fund, which had apparently invested in nothing but his deception. All told, Trevor had taken nearly $40,000 from her over the course of their relationship. Money she'd given freely, believing in their future together. Her phone rang. It was Trevor. "Hey, beautiful." His voice was warm and loving. "Feeling better? I brought you soup." Even now, even knowing what she knew, part of her wanted to believe it was real. 2 years of conditioning was hard to overcome. "I'm feeling much better," she lied. "Come on up." When Trevor arrived with takeout soup, that she'd probably end up paying him back for, Melinda watched him with new eyes. She studied his face as he talked about his day, looking for signs of the deception she'd been blind to. How had she missed it? The way his eyes shifted when he talked about work. The way he always changed the subject when she asked about his family. The way he never quite answered direct questions about their future. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told him. "About the destination wedding." Trevor's eyes lit up. "And? I think we should do it. Go big. Make it perfect." The relief and greed that flashed across his face was unmistakable now that she knew what to look for. "Really? You're the best fiancé in the world." "I want to start planning right away," Melinda continued. "Can you send me the guest list? Your family, your friends? I want to make sure everyone can be there." "Of course." Trevor was practically bouncing with excitement. "This is going to be incredible." That evening, after Trevor left to grab drinks with his buddy Jake, probably another lie, Melinda opened her laptop and began her real work. She created a new email address and started reaching out to wedding vendors in tropical locations, but not for the reasons Trevor thought. She also started a more important project, documenting everything. Every lie, every theft, every moment of deception. She pulled financial records, saved text messages, and began building a timeline of Trevor's betrayal. But the most important call she made was to her friend Rachel, who worked at a private investigation firm. "I need someone followed," Melinda said without preamble when Rachel answered. "Mel? What's going on?" "I can't explain everything right now, but I need to know everywhere my fiancé goes, everyone he sees, everything he does. Can you help me?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "This doesn't sound good." "It's not good," Melinda agreed. "It's really, really not good. I'll have someone on him tomorrow." "Mel, are you okay?" Melinda looked around her apartment at the photos of her and Trevor scattered on her shelves, at the future she'd thought they were building together. Everything was a lie. But for the first time since last night, she felt a spark of something other than heartbreak. "I will be," she said. "I'm going to make sure I will be." After she hung up, Melinda sat down and wrote out everything she could remember from the restaurant. Every word, every laugh, every cruel joke at her expense. She would need it all for what was coming. Trevor thought he was smart. He thought he'd found the perfect mark, a woman so in love she'd never question him, so trusting she'd never doubt him, so generous she'd fund his real life without ever knowing it. He was right about one thing: she had been useful. Very useful. But her usefulness to him was about to end. And his usefulness to her was just beginning. The private investigator's report arrived 3 days later, and it was even worse than Melinda had imagined. Trevor wasn't just cheating with Natasha, he was living a completely double life. The photos showed him apartment hunting with her, shopping for furniture together, even looking at wedding venues. According to the investigator, Trevor spent more time with Natasha than he did with Melinda. But the most damaging discovery was financial. The investigator had traced Trevor's activities and found he was funneling Melinda's money through a business account he'd opened without her knowledge. Every dollar she'd given him had been carefully redirected to support his real life with Natasha. Melinda spread the photos across her dining room table, studying them like a general planning a military campaign. There was Trevor helping Natasha move boxes into an apartment Melinda had unknowingly paid the deposit for. Trevor and Natasha at a jewelry store, looking at wedding bands. Trevor and Natasha at couples counseling, apparently working on their relationship issues. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Trevor, missing you today. Stuck in back-to-back meetings until late. Dinner tomorrow? She looked at the timestamp on the photo of him feeding Natasha ice cream in the park. Taken 20 minutes ago. Melinda set down her phone and opened her laptop. If Trevor wanted to play games with her money, she'd show him how the game was really played. She started by opening new bank accounts at a different institution, one Trevor had never heard of. Over the next week, she would gradually transfer her assets to accounts he couldn't access. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was dealing with. She called her accountant, James, and asked him to meet her for coffee. James had been handling her business finances for 3 years and was discreet, professional, and most importantly, loyal to her. I need you to look at something, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Hypothetically, if someone had been stealing money from me and funneling it through business accounts, what would that look like legally? James opened the folder and his eyebrows shot up as he reviewed the financial documents. Melinda, this isn't hypothetical, is it? No, she admitted. It's not. This is fraud, James said quietly, his voice serious. Wire fraud, possibly identity theft depending on how he accessed these accounts. We're talking federal crimes here. What would I need to prove it? James studied the documents more carefully. Bank records, which you have. Evidence of unauthorized access, which these statements suggest. Any documentation showing he misrepresented the purpose of these transfers. He looked up at her. How long has this been going on? 2 years, Melinda said. Maybe longer. I trusted him completely. The statute of limitations for wire fraud is 5 years, James said grimly. If you want to pursue this legally, you have time. But Melinda, you need to be careful. If he realizes you know. He won't, Melinda said with more confidence than she felt. I'm going to be very, very careful. That afternoon, she went to see a lawyer. Sandra Martinez was known for handling complex financial crimes, and she listened to Melinda's story with growing anger. What he's done is theft, plain and simple, Sandra said. But proving it in court will require careful documentation. Every conversation, every transaction, every lie needs to be recorded and verified. I have recordings, Melinda said, playing Sandra the audio from the restaurant. Sandra's face hardened as she listened to Trevor and his family laugh about using Melinda as their walking ATM. When it finished, she was quiet for a long moment. This is good, Sandra finally said. But we need more. We need to document ongoing fraud, not just past theft. Can you do that safely? Melinda thought about Trevor's greedy excitement when she'd agreed to the destination wedding. Yes, she said. I think I can. That evening, Trevor came over with Chinese takeout and his laptop, claiming he wanted to start planning their dream wedding. Melinda had hidden tiny recording devices throughout her apartment, devices so small Trevor would never notice them. I've been looking at resorts, Trevor said, pulling up websites on his computer. This one in Belize looks perfect. Private beach, all-inclusive, they handle everything. Melinda looked at the screen. The cheapest package was $30,000. For 50 guests, they were looking at $60,000 minimum. It's beautiful, she said. But can we afford it? Trevor's mask slipped for just a second, a flash of irritation crossing his face before he replaced it with his patient smile. Baby, you know I'm still paying off debt. But your business is doing so well, and you've always said you wanted a perfect wedding. There it was. The manipulation, the guilt, the assumption that her money was his money. You're right, Melinda said, forcing enthusiasm into her voice. Let's do it. Should I transfer the deposit money to your account? That would be great, Trevor said, leaning over to kiss her. You're incredible. Most women would be stressed about the cost, but you just want us to be happy. Most women wouldn't be funding their own betrayal, Melinda thought. Over the next 2 weeks, Melinda played the perfect fiancé while secretly dismantling Trevor's scheme. She transferred the wedding deposit to his account as promised, but she also had James track exactly where that money went. As expected, it didn't go to any wedding venue. It went directly to Trevor's secret account, the one he shared with Natasha. She agreed to look at wedding dresses and let Trevor come along to help her choose. While he sat in the boutique looking bored, she noticed him texting constantly. Later, the private investigator confirmed he'd been sending photos of the dresses to Natasha, asking for her opinion. Her own wedding dress selection was being filtered through the woman who was really going to wear it. Each discovery was like a fresh knife wound, but Melinda forced herself to stay focused on the bigger picture. Every lie Trevor told was being recorded. Every dollar he took was being documented. Every moment of his deception was being carefully catalogued for the reckoning that was coming. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Kissing him goodnight while knowing those same lips had been on Natasha's skin hours earlier. Listening to him talk about their future while knowing he was planning a completely different future with someone else. Watching him go through her mail, her financial documents, her private papers, looking for more opportunities to steal from her. But she endured it because she had a plan. And every day that passed, that plan grew more detailed and more devastating. Trevor had spent 2 years playing the long game with her heart and her money. Now it was her turn to play the long game with his life. The private investigator had discovered something interesting: Trevor's real job situation. He'd been fired from his position at the marketing firm 8 months ago for embezzling petty cash. Everything he'd told her about work promotions and business trips had been lies. He'd been unemployed for months, living entirely off her money while she believed he was building his career. Even worse, he'd forged her signature on several documents, including a loan application and a credit card. He'd stolen her identity as efficiently as he'd stolen her heart. But Trevor had made one crucial error in his calculations. He'd assumed Melinda was weak, trusting, and naive. He'd assumed she'd never fight back, never question him, never protect herself. He'd assumed wrong on all counts. As Melinda sat in her apartment, surrounded by evidence of his crimes, she felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. Trevor wanted to play financial games? She'd been managing money since she was 16. He wanted to manipulate and deceive? She'd been analyzing complex problems for a living for 8 years. He'd picked the wrong woman to underestimate. And he was about to learn exactly how expensive that mistake would be. 3 weeks into her investigation, Melinda had enough evidence to send Trevor to prison for the next decade. But prison wasn't enough. She wanted him to lose everything the way he'd planned for her to lose everything. She wanted his reputation destroyed, his relationships shattered, his future obliterated. She wanted him to understand what it felt like to have someone you love rip your entire world apart. The key to destroying Trevor was understanding what he valued most. And from watching him for weeks, Melinda knew exactly what that was. His image. Trevor was obsessed with how people saw him. He needed to be viewed as successful, charming, the kind of man who could win any woman and handle any situation. His greatest fear wasn't legal consequences. It was public humiliation. Melinda was going to give him both. She'd been carefully building her case on multiple fronts. Sandra, her lawyer, was preparing criminal charges based on the financial fraud. James, her accountant, was documenting every stolen dollar and calculating interest and damages. The private investigator was tracking Trevor's every move, building a timeline of his deception. But Melinda's most important work was happening in her own apartment, during the hours Trevor spent with her planning their fake wedding. "I think we should invite everyone," she told him one evening as they sat on her couch with wedding planning books scattered around them. "All your coworkers, all your friends, your whole family. I want everyone to see how happy we are." Trevor's eyes lit up with greed. "That's a great idea. A big celebration." "I've been thinking about the cost," Melinda continued carefully. "For everything we want, we're looking at maybe $80,000 total." She watched Trevor's face. He was practically salivating at the number. That's a lot," he said, but his tone suggested he thought it was a lot of wonderful money for him to steal. "I know. But I have some investments I can liquidate. I want our wedding to be perfect." Melinda forced tears into her eyes. "Trevor, you're everything to me. I'd spend every penny I have to make you happy." Trevor pulled her close, and she could feel his excitement in the way his hands shook slightly. "Baby, you're amazing. I'm so lucky to have you." Lucky indeed, Melinda thought grimly. "There's just one thing," she said, pulling back to look at him. "I need you to sign some papers for the venue. Legal stuff about financial responsibility. You know how these places are." Trevor nodded eagerly. "Of course. Whatever you need." The papers Melinda had him sign weren't for any venue. They were authorization forms for James to investigate their joint accounts and financial history. By signing them, Trevor had given her legal permission to examine every transaction, every transfer, every penny he'd stolen from her. It was also a confession. In his own handwriting, Trevor confirmed that he had access to her accounts and had been making transactions on her behalf. Combined with the evidence of where that money had actually gone, it was legally devastating. But Melinda wasn't done. She needed to make sure Trevor's betrayal was exposed to everyone who mattered to him. She started with his work friends. Trevor had always claimed his co-workers loved him, that he was popular and well respected. She reached out to them through professional networking sites, pretending to plan a surprise bachelor party. What she discovered was illuminating. Most of Trevor's supposed work friends had never heard of her. But they'd all met Natasha. At company parties, holiday events, office gatherings, Natasha had been introduced as Trevor's girlfriend for over a year. Melinda had never been invited to a single work event. She saved every conversation, every email, every piece of evidence that Trevor had been publicly dating Natasha while privately using Melinda for money. Next, she investigated Natasha herself. If she was going to destroy Trevor's life, she needed to understand the woman he'd chosen over her. What she found made her blood boil with renewed fury. Natasha knew everything. She wasn't an innocent victim of Trevor's deception, she was a full partner in his scheme. The private investigator had captured audio of Natasha and Trevor planning how to extract more money from Melinda. Natasha had actively helped him forge documents and had even suggested ways to manipulate Melinda's emotions to increase her generosity. "Just tell her you're stressed about wedding costs." Natasha's voice was clear on the recording. "She'll offer to pay for everything. She's so desperate to make you happy." "You're brilliant," Trevor had responded. "She has no idea she's funding our real wedding." Their real wedding. While Melinda was planning a fake destination wedding, Trevor and Natasha were using her money to plan their actual ceremony. The beach wedding in Belize wasn't for Trevor and Melinda, it was for Trevor and Natasha. They were planning to steal every penny from Melinda and then have their dream wedding with her money. The cruelty of it took Melinda's breath away. They weren't just stealing her money, they were stealing her dreams and using them to build their own happiness. But their cruelty would be their downfall. Melinda spent the next week reaching out to everyone in Trevor's life. She contacted his parents, his siblings, his college friends, his coworkers, his neighbors. She didn't reveal what she knew, yet she just gathered information and built relationships. To Trevor's family, she was the devoted fiancé excited about joining their family. To his friends, she was the girlfriend planning a surprise celebration. To his coworkers, she was the mysterious woman they'd heard so much about but never met. Everyone was eager to help with wedding planning. Everyone wanted to be included in what they thought was a happy occasion. Nobody suspected that Melinda was actually planning their guest list for Trevor's public destruction. The most valuable connection she made was with Trevor's boss at his previous job, the one he'd been fired from for theft. When Melinda reached out, claiming to be planning a surprise party for Trevor and needing contact information for his former colleagues, the woman's response was immediate and alarming. "You might want to rethink your association with Trevor," the woman said carefully. "I can't go into details, but let's just say his departure from our company wasn't voluntary or amicable." Melinda pressed gently, and eventually learned that Trevor had been stealing from petty cash for months before getting caught. He'd also been accessing the company credit card for personal expenses and had forged his supervisor's signature on several documents. Trevor wasn't just a casual liar or opportunistic thief. He was a serial fraudster with a pattern of targeting people who trusted him. The knowledge made Melinda's resolve even stronger. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting every future victim Trevor might target. As she sat in her apartment that night, surrounded by evidence of Trevor's crimes and the contact information for everyone in his life, Melinda felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Trevor had spent 2 years carefully planning her destruction, thinking she was too stupid and too in love to protect herself. But Melinda had spent 1 month planning his complete annihilation, and unlike Trevor, she was actually smart enough to pull it off. The pieces were all in place. The evidence was overwhelming. The audience was assembled. Now all she needed was the perfect stage for Trevor's final performance. And she knew exactly where that would be. Melinda's hands were steady as she sent the email to Trevor's parents, his siblings, his coworkers, and his closest friends. The subject line read, "You're invited to a very special celebration." The email itself was warm and excited. "Trevor and I are throwing a surprise engagement party to celebrate our upcoming wedding. We've been planning this for months and can't wait to share our joy with everyone who matters to us. Please join us for dinner, drinks, and a very special announcement. RSVP by Friday, we have so much to share with all of you." She'd rented the private dining room at the same Italian restaurant where she'd discovered Trevor's betrayal. The irony was too perfect to resist. Where her old life had ended, Trevor's life would end too. But before the party, she had one more crucial piece of evidence to collect. Trevor had been pressuring her all week about liquidating her investments for the wedding. He was getting impatient, probably because Natasha was getting impatient. The private investigator had captured them arguing about money several times in recent days. "She's taking too long," Natasha had complained. "We need that money now. The venue deposit is due, and I've already picked out my dress. Relax, Trevor had replied. She'll give me everything. She always does. I just need to push a little harder. So Melinda decided to let him push. Baby, we need to talk about the wedding money, Trevor said when he came over that evening. His usual charm was strained, replaced by barely concealed irritation. What about it? Melinda asked innocently. You said you'd liquidate those investments weeks ago. The venue is breathing down my neck about the deposit. I know. It's just such a big step. That money represents my entire life savings. Trevor's mask slipped completely. Melinda, we've been planning this wedding for months. I've already told the venue we're committed. If you're going to back out now, I'm not backing out. Melinda protested, letting her voice break slightly. I need to know that you're as committed to this as I am. That you're not going to change your mind about us. Of course I'm committed, Trevor snapped. I proposed to you, didn't I? I'm planning a wedding with you. What more do you need? This was the moment Melinda had been waiting for. She pulled out her phone and started recording, keeping it hidden on her lap. Tell me you love me, she said, tears in her voice. Tell me I'm the only woman you want to be with. Trevor softened, probably realizing he'd been too harsh. Of course I love you. You're my fiancé. We're going to be married. But am I the love of your life? Melinda pressed. Am I the woman you dream about spending forever with? Trevor hesitated for just a second too long. Yes, he said finally. You're everything to me. More than any other woman? More than anyone from your past. Another hesitation. Melinda, why are you asking me this? Because I need to know that when I give you my life savings, it's going toward our real future together. Not just some placeholder until someone better comes along. You're being paranoid, Trevor said, but his voice was defensive. There's no one else. There's never been anyone else who mattered. Lies, Melinda thought. Every word was a lie. What about Natasha? She asked quietly. Trevor went completely still. What about her? You never really told me why you two broke up. She was your girlfriend for 3 years in college. That's a long time. That was ancient history, Trevor said, but she could hear the panic in his voice. I barely even remember her. Really? Because I saw you at the coffee shop last week. You were talking to someone who looked just like her. Trevor's face went pale. I don't know what you think you saw, but it's okay, Melinda said gently. I just want to make sure we're being honest with each other. Before I liquidate my entire life savings for our wedding. We are being honest, Trevor said desperately. Melinda, I swear to you there's no one else. You're my future. You're the woman I want to marry. Then prove it, Melinda said. Call her. Right now. Call Natasha and tell her you're getting married to someone else. That's crazy, Trevor said. I don't even have her number anymore. Really? Then how did you recognize her at the coffee shop? Trevor was sweating now, trapped in his own lies. Look, maybe I ran into her briefly. Maybe we exchanged numbers just to be polite. But that doesn't mean anything. Call her, Melinda repeated. If she doesn't matter to you, if I'm really the love of your life, then call her right now and tell her you're marrying me. I'm not calling anyone, Trevor said angrily. This is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to prove my love to you by performing some jealous girlfriend test. Jealous girlfriend test? Melinda let hurt flood her voice. Trevor, I'm asking for basic honesty. If you can't even call one ex-girlfriend to tell her you're getting married, what does that say about our relationship? It says that you're being insecure and controlling, Trevor shot back. I'm not jumping through hoops to prove something I've already proven by proposing to you. Fine, Melinda said quietly. Then I'm not liquidating my investments. Not until I feel secure in our relationship. Trevor stared at her in shock. You're withholding money because I won't make a phone call? I'm protecting myself because my fiancé is acting like he has something to hide. For a moment, Trevor looked like he wanted to shake her. Then his expression shifted to cold calculation. You know what? Fine. Let's settle this once and for all. He pulled out his phone. I'll call her. I'll prove to you that she means nothing to me. Melinda watched as Trevor scrolled through his contacts. She could see Natasha's name in his recent calls list, along with dozens of texts and hours of call time. All recent. Trevor hit the call button and put the phone on speaker. Hey baby, Natasha's voice filled the room warm and loving. I was just thinking about you. Melinda's heart stopped. Baby. Ah, Trevor said, panic in his eyes as he looked at Melinda. Hi Natasha. I need to tell you something. What's wrong? Natasha's voice immediately shifted to concern. You sound weird. Um, I'm getting married, Trevor said, the words coming out like broken glass. Silence. Then Natasha started laughing. Very funny, Trevor. Is this your way of getting me to agree to the Belize thing? Because I already said yes to the beach wedding. Melinda felt the room spin around her. The beach wedding. Natasha had said yes to the beach wedding. Natasha, Trevor said desperately, I'm serious. I'm engaged to someone else. Trevor, what are you talking about? Natasha's laughter died. We just picked out rings yesterday. We just signed the lease on the apartment. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Melinda looked at Trevor, who had gone completely white. Rings? Melinda said quietly. What rings? Trevor ended the call with shaking hands. Melinda, I can explain. What rings, Trevor? It's not what you think. What rings? Trevor broke. Yes, I've been seeing Natasha. But it's complicated. We have history and I was confused, but I chose you. I'm here with you. You chose me? Melinda's voice was deadly quiet. You chose me to pay for your life with her. No, that's not. Get out. Melinda, please let me explain. Get out. Trevor grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, pausing only to look back at her with desperate eyes. This isn't over, he said. We can work through this. After he left, Melinda sat in her quiet apartment and smiled. She had it all on recording. Trevor's lies, his panic, Natasha's casual confirmation of their wedding plans, their shared apartment, their ring shopping. She had everything she needed. The engagement party was in 3 days. Everyone who mattered to Trevor would be there, expecting to celebrate his bright future. Instead, they'd be witnessing the complete destruction of his life. And this time, Trevor would be the one who never saw it coming. The next morning, Melinda woke up to 17 missed calls and 34 text messages from Trevor. She deleted them all without reading them. Whatever lies he was trying to spin, whatever manipulation he was attempting, she wasn't interested. She had work to do. Her first call was to Sandra, her lawyer. I have the final piece, Melinda said without preamble. Trevor admitted to the affair, and I have Natasha confirming their wedding plans on recording. Good, Sandra said grimly. That gives us everything we need for the criminal charges. Wire fraud, identity theft, and now we can add conspiracy to commit fraud. How do you want to proceed? I want to file the charges after the engagement party. I want him to have one last moment of thinking he's won before everything crashes down. That's risky, Sandra warned. If he realizes you know everything, he might try to cover his tracks or disappear with whatever money he still has access to. He won't, Melinda said with confidence. His ego won't let him believe I'm smart enough to catch him. Sandra was quiet for a moment. Melinda, I have to ask. Are you sure about the public confrontation? It might feel good in the moment, but it could complicate the criminal case. I need everyone to know who he really is, Melinda said. His family, his friends, his co-workers. They all need to see his true face. Then we'll do it your way. But I'm filing a restraining order beforehand, just in case things get ugly. Melinda's next call was to the private investigator. I need you at the restaurant on Saturday night, she said. Hidden cameras, audio recording, everything documented. Can you do that? Absolutely, Rachel said. But Mel, are you sure you want to do this publicly? There might be a quieter way to handle this. There might be, Melinda agreed. But Trevor has spent 2 years publicly humiliating me without me even knowing it. Turnabout is fair play. Her third call was to James, her accountant. The financial documents are all ready, he reported. Every stolen dollar is documented, every forged signature is verified. We've also frozen all the accounts he has access to. If he tries to move any more money, we'll catch it immediately. What about the money he's already taken? Most of it is still in the accounts he shares with Natasha. Since it's provably stolen funds, we can get it back through civil litigation. Plus damages and interest. How much are we talking about total? With damages and penalties? Trevor is looking at owing you close to $200,000. Melinda smiled grimly. Trevor had thought he was stealing $40,000. He was about to learn that theft was much more expensive than he'd realized. But her most important call was to Trevor's mother. Mrs. Patterson? This is Melinda. I'm so excited about the party on Saturday. I have something very special planned for Trevor. Oh, how wonderful. Trevor's mother sounded delighted. He's such a lucky man to have found you. We're all so looking forward to celebrating with you both. The irony of those words made Melinda's chest tight with anger. This woman had laughed at her expense, had called her a walking ATM, had encouraged her son's cruelty. but she kept her voice warm and sweet. "I was wondering if you could help me with something," Melinda continued. "I want to surprise Trevor by having everyone share their favorite memories of him. Could you maybe ask the family to prepare some stories? Something about what a wonderful man he is." "What a lovely idea." "Yes, of course. We'll come prepared to tell everyone what a special boy Trevor has always been." Special indeed, Melinda thought. By Friday afternoon, Melinda had confirmed that 43 people would be attending Trevor's engagement party. His parents, his siblings, his co-workers from both his current and previous jobs, his college friends and his neighbors. Everyone who mattered in his life would be there. She'd also confirmed that none of them knew about Natasha. Trevor had been keeping his two lives completely separate. To his family and friends, Melinda was his devoted fiancé. To his work colleagues and his real social circle, Natasha was his girlfriend. He'd been managing two completely different identities, and neither side knew the other existed. That compartmentalization had protected him for 2 years. Tomorrow night it would destroy him. Trevor had been calling and texting constantly since their confrontation, but Melinda had been ignoring him completely. Finally, on Friday evening she answered. "Melinda, thank God." Trevor's voice was desperate. "We need to talk. I can explain everything." "Can you?" Melinda asked calmly. "Yes. Look, I made mistakes. I was confused about my feelings and I handled things badly. But I love you. I want to marry you. Natasha was she was a mistake." "Interesting," Melinda said. "So you're choosing me over her?" "Yes. Absolutely. I already told Natasha it's over. I'm committed to you, to our future together." Another lie. The private investigator had confirmed that Trevor had seen Natasha twice since their confrontation, and they'd been apartment hunting both times. "I'm glad to hear that," Melinda said. "I've been thinking about what you said and you're right. I was being insecure and controlling." She could hear Trevor's relief through the phone. "Really? Really? I love you, Trevor. I want to marry you. I want us to be happy together." "Thank you," Trevor said, his voice thick with emotion that might have even been genuine. "I promise things will be different. No more lies, no more confusion. Just us." "I'm looking forward to the party tomorrow," Melinda said. "I have something very special planned." "What kind of special?" "It's a surprise." "But Trevor? I think it's going to change everything between us." "I love you," Trevor said. "I know I've been an idiot, but I love you so much." "I know you do," Melinda replied. "See you tomorrow night." After she hung up, Melinda sat in her apartment and looked around one last time. Tomorrow night, her old life would officially end. Trevor would be exposed, arrested, and destroyed. But she would be free. Free from his lies, his manipulation, his theft. Free from the woman she'd been when she loved him, naive, trusting, generous to a fault. Tomorrow night she would become someone new. Someone who fought back. Someone who didn't let herself be used and discarded. Someone who made sure that people who hurt her paid the full price for their cruelty. She pulled out her phone and sent one final text to Trevor. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I have so much to tell everyone about us." His response came immediately. "I love you too. Tomorrow will be perfect." Melinda smiled and turned off her phone. Trevor was right about one thing. Tomorrow would be perfect. Just not for him. Saturday morning arrived gray and rainy, which Melinda took as a good omen. Everything about this day felt like the calm before a storm, and she wanted the weather to match her mood. She spent the morning at the spa, getting her hair and makeup done. Not because she wanted to look beautiful for Trevor, but because she wanted to look powerful. When people remembered this night, she wanted them to remember her as strong, composed, and completely in control. The woman in the mirror who looked back at her was someone she barely recognized. Gone was the soft, trusting woman who had given Trevor everything he asked for. In her place was someone harder, sharper, more dangerous. Someone who had learned that sometimes the only way to protect yourself was to destroy the person trying to hurt you. At noon, Sandra called with final legal preparations. "The restraining order is filed and ready to be served," she reported. "The criminal charges are prepared and will be filed Monday morning. The civil lawsuit for recovery of stolen funds is ready to go. Everything is in place." "What about the evidence packages?" 43 identical folders, each containing copies of every financial document, every recording, every piece of evidence against Trevor. "The private investigator will distribute them during the party." "Perfect." "Melinda," Sandra's voice was gentle. "Are you ready for this? Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. Trevor's life will be over." "His life should be over," Melinda replied without hesitation. "He tried to end mine. I'm just returning the favor. At 2 p.m., the private investigator called to confirm the technical setup. Hidden cameras are installed throughout the restaurant's private dining room, Rachel reported. Audio recording devices are in place. We'll capture everything from multiple angles. What about security? 2 off-duty police officers will be present, disguised as wait staff. If Trevor gets violent or tries to leave, they'll handle it. He won't get violent, Melinda said. He'll be too shocked. But it's good to be prepared. At 4 p.m., James called with financial updates. We've traced all of Trevor's accounts, he said. The money he stole from you is sitting in 3 different banks, mostly in accounts he shares with Natasha. The moment you give the word, we'll freeze everything and begin recovery proceedings. What about Trevor's assets? He has almost nothing in his own name. The car is leased, the apartment is rented, even his watch is financed. He's been living entirely off your money and credit. So when this is over, he'll have nothing. Less than nothing. Between the stolen money, the damages, and the legal fees, Trevor will owe hundreds of thousands of dollars he doesn't have. Melinda felt a deep satisfaction at that news. Trevor had planned to leave her with nothing. Instead, he would be the one with nothing. At 6 p.m. she got dressed. She'd chosen a simple black dress, elegant but not flashy. She wanted to look like someone in control, someone who couldn't be underestimated or dismissed. As she put on her jewelry, her phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. On my way to pick you up. I can't wait for everyone to see how beautiful you are tonight. She replied, I'll meet you there. I have some last-minute preparations to handle. His response was immediate. Everything okay? Everything is perfect, she wrote back. Tonight will be unforgettable. At 7 p.m. Melinda arrived at the restaurant. The private dining room looked elegant and festive, exactly as she'd requested. The tables were set for 43 guests, with flowers and candles creating a warm, celebratory atmosphere. It looked like the perfect setting for an engagement party. It would be the perfect setting for Trevor's destruction. Rachel, the private investigator, approached her quietly. Everything is ready. The moment you give the signal, we'll begin documenting everything. How many people have arrived? About half the guest list is here. Trevor's parents, his siblings, several co-workers. They all seem excited and happy. Of course they do, Melinda said grimly. They think they're celebrating love. They have no idea they're about to witness a murder. Metaphorically speaking, Rachel said carefully. Metaphorically, Melinda agreed. At 7:30, Trevor arrived. He looked nervous but excited, dressed in his best suit with a bright smile on his face. He crossed the room immediately to kiss her cheek. You look incredible, he said, his eyes bright with what looked like genuine affection. I'm so glad we worked things out. So am I, Melinda replied, letting him hold her hand. Are you ready for your surprise? I love surprises, Trevor said, squeezing her fingers. Especially from you. Melinda looked around the room at all the people who'd come to celebrate Trevor. His parents beaming with pride. His co-workers raising glasses of wine. His college friends laughing and talking about old times. All of them had no idea what kind of man they were celebrating. But they were about to learn. Ladies and gentlemen, Melinda said, raising her voice to address the room. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. The conversation died down as everyone turned to look at her. 43 faces, all smiling and expectant. I know you're all here to celebrate Trevor and me, Melinda continued, her voice warm and happy. And we are definitely going to celebrate tonight. But first, I have something very special to share with all of you. Trevor was grinning beside her, clearly thinking this was leading up to some romantic gesture or sweet surprise. He had no idea that his life was about to end. You see, Melinda said, her smile never wavering, Trevor and I have been planning this evening for weeks. And I've learned so much about the man I thought I was going to marry. The private investigator moved quietly around the room, handing out folders to each guest. People accepted them curiously, not yet opening them. Trevor, Melinda said, turning to face him directly. Do you remember what you told your parents about me at this very restaurant a month ago? Trevor's face went white. Melinda, what are you? You called me your walking ATM, she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. You told them I was just convenient while you figured out how to win back the love of your life. That's not, Trevor started, but Melinda wasn't finished. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced to the shocked room, I'd like you all to meet the real Trevor Patterson. The man who's been using me as his personal bank account while planning his actual wedding to his actual fiancée, Natasha. The room erupted in shocked murmurs as people began opening their folders. Trevor made a desperate grab for the nearest folder, but it was too late. The evidence was already spreading through the room like wildfire. His mother's face went ashen as she read the financial documents. His father's hands shook as he looked at the photos of Trevor and Natasha apartment hunting. His co-workers stared in horror at the recordings of Trevor laughing about his walking ATM. "Melinda, please," Trevor said desperately. "Let me explain." "Oh, you'll have plenty of opportunities to explain," Melinda said calmly. "To the police, to the FBI, to the judge. You see, stealing $40,000 from someone you claim to love isn't just heartbreak. It's federal wire fraud." Trevor looked around the room at all the faces staring at him with shock and disgust. His whole world was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Surprise," Melinda said softly, her voice audible in the dead silence of the room. The walking ATM had just dispensed the most expensive withdrawal of Trevor's life. And the transaction was going to cost him everything. The silence in the room was deafening. 43 people sat frozen, staring at the evidence in their hands while Trevor stood in the center like a deer caught in headlights. His mother was the first to speak, her voice shaking with disbelief. "Trevor, what is this? What are these bank statements?" Trevor opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked desperately around the room, searching for a friendly face, but found only shocked stares and disgusted expressions. "I can answer that, Mrs. Patterson," Melinda said calmly. "Those are records showing how your son systematically stole $40,000 from me over the past 2 years. Every emergency, every crisis, every sad story about family medical bills or car repairs, all lies designed to get money from me." Trevor's father stood up slowly, his face red with anger. "Son, is this true?" "Dad, I can explain," Trevor started. "Actually, let me save you the trouble," Melinda interrupted. She pulled out her phone and connected it to the restaurant's sound system. "I think everyone should hear this." The recording from the restaurant a month ago filled the room. Trevor's voice, clear and unmistakable, laughing with his parents about his walking ATM. Calling Melinda useful but not serious. Planning to use her money to fund his real life with Natasha. As the recording played, Melinda watched the faces around the room. Trevor's mother looked like she was going to be sick. His co-workers were staring at him with horror. His college friends were backing away from him like he was contagious. When the recording ended, the silence was even more complete than before. "There's more," Melinda said pleasantly. "Trevor has been living a completely double life. While he was telling all of you about our wonderful relationship, he was also engaged to another woman named Natasha. They've been planning their wedding for months using my money, of course." She played the phone call with Natasha, where she casually mentioned their wedding plans and their shared apartment. Several people in the room gasped audibly. Trevor's sister stood up, her face pale. "Trevor, who is Natasha?" She's nobody," Trevor said desperately. "An ex-girlfriend. It's complicated, but..." "She's your fiancé," Melinda corrected. "You gave her a ring. You signed a lease together. You've been planning a beach wedding in Belize, the same wedding you convinced me to pay for." One of Trevor's co-workers, a woman named Jennifer, was flipping through the evidence folder with growing anger. "Trevor, are these photos of you with another woman?" "Jennifer, I can explain. These are dated last week." Jennifer stood up, waving the photos. "You were apartment hunting with her last Tuesday. The same day you told us at work that you were having dinner with your fiancé." "Which fiancé?" another co-worker called out. "Melinda or Natasha?" Trevor's face was sweating now, his usual charm completely gone. "Look, I made some mistakes." "Mistakes?" Melinda's voice cut through his stammering. "Trevor, you didn't make mistakes. You committed federal crimes. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery. You used my credit cards, forged my signature, and stole money from our joint accounts." His father was reading through the financial documents, his face getting redder by the minute. "Trevor, these numbers, $40,000? You stole $40,000 from this woman?" "It wasn't stealing," Trevor said weakly. "We were engaged. Couples share money." "While you were engaged to someone else," his mother snapped. "Trevor, how could you do this? How could you bring such shame on our family?" The same mother who had laughed about Melinda being a walking ATM was now horrified to be associated with her son's crimes. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson," Melinda said, her voice gentle but firm, "I want you to know that I hold you partially responsible for this. The recording clearly shows you encouraging Trevor's deception and laughing about my pain." Trevor's mother went white. "We didn't know." "You knew enough," Melinda replied. "You knew Trevor was using me for money while planning to marry someone else. You thought it was funny?" She turned to address the entire room. I want everyone here to understand exactly who Trevor is. For 2 years he convinced me that he loved me. He proposed to me. He planned a wedding with me. All while stealing from me to fund his real life with another woman. Trevor made one last desperate attempt to control the situation. Melinda, please. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I hurt you. But we can work this out privately. You don't need to involve all these people. These people deserve to know who you really are, Melinda said firmly. Your family deserves to know they raised a criminal. Your friends deserve to know they've been socializing with a fraud. Your coworkers deserve to know they work with a thief. Jennifer from Trevor's office stood up again. Wait a minute. Trevor, didn't you tell us your girlfriend was helping you buy a house? Trevor's face went even whiter. That was my money, Melinda said. He told me it was for our future home together. Apparently he told you it was for his home with me. In reality, it was for his apartment with Natasha. Jesus Christ, Trevor, one of his college friends muttered. How many lies have you told? How many people have you stolen from? Another coworker added. Trevor looked around the room frantically, but there was no escape. Every face showed disgust, anger, or betrayal. His entire social circle was collapsing in real time. I think everyone should also know, Melinda continued, that Trevor was fired from his previous job for embezzlement. The pattern of theft and deception goes back years. His former coworkers, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. We couldn't say anything due to legal agreements, one of them said, but since it's out there now, yes. Trevor was terminated for stealing from petty cash and using the company credit card for personal expenses. He also forged signatures on expense reports, another added. Trevor was now standing alone in the center of the room while 43 people stared at him with complete disgust. His parents were crying. His siblings had moved away from him. His friends and coworkers were looking at him like they'd never seen him before. The police will be here soon, Melinda announced calmly. Trevor will be arrested tonight for wire fraud, identity theft, and forgery. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. Melinda, please, Trevor tried one last time, his voice breaking. I know I hurt you, but having me arrested won't solve anything. It won't give you back the money. Actually, it will, Melinda replied. My lawyers have already frozen all the accounts where you hid my stolen money. I'll be getting every penny back plus damages and interest. You, on the other hand, will have nothing. Less than nothing. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. Trevor would lose his job, his reputation, his freedom, and every relationship that mattered to him. He would face years in federal prison and emerge with a criminal record and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. His mother stood up shakily. Trevor, how could you do this to us? To yourself? To this poor girl who loved you? I didn't mean for it to go this far, Trevor said, tears in his eyes. I was going to pay her back. With what money? His father demanded. You don't have a job. You've been living off stolen funds for months. Sirens could be heard in the distance, getting closer. The police are here, Melinda announced. Trevor, I want you to remember this moment. Remember how it feels to have everyone you care about discover who you really are. Remember how it feels to lose everything in a single night. She looked around the room at all the shocked faces. That's how I felt when I discovered your betrayal. The difference is I was innocent. You're not. The police entered the restaurant just as Trevor collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. The man who had been so confident, so charming, so sure he could manipulate anyone, was now broken and exposed. As they read him his rights and placed him in handcuffs, Trevor looked at Melinda one last time. I really did love you, he said quietly. No, Melinda replied, her voice steady and strong. You loved my money. You loved my trust. You loved how easy I was to manipulate. But you never loved me. As they led Trevor away in handcuffs, the room remained silent. 43 people who had come to celebrate an engagement had instead witnessed the complete destruction of a man's life. But Melinda felt no sympathy. Trevor had planned to destroy her life and leave her with nothing while he rode off into the sunset with another woman and her money. Instead, he was the one left with nothing. Justice, Melinda thought, was a beautiful thing. The restaurant emptied quickly after Trevor's arrest. His family left in stunned silence, his mother crying and his father making angry phone calls to lawyers. His co-workers and friends scattered like they were afraid his criminality might be contagious. Melinda sat alone in the empty dining room, surrounded by the evidence folders and abandoned wine glasses. The private investigator approached her quietly. How are you feeling? Rachel asked. Free, Melinda replied without hesitation. For the first time in 2 years, I feel completely free. Over the next few days, Melinda's life transformed completely. The local news picked up the story, local woman exposes fiancé's elaborate fraud scheme. And suddenly everyone wanted to interview the woman who had orchestrated such a perfect revenge. But Melinda declined most interviews. She had no interest in being famous for being victimized. She had better things to do with her life. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Trevor's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Sandra was ruthless in her prosecution. With the overwhelming evidence Melinda had gathered, Trevor had no choice but to plead guilty to all charges. He's looking at 5 to 7 years in federal prison, Sandra reported after the sentencing hearing. Plus full restitution, which with damages and interest comes to $250,000. What about Natasha? She's trying to claim she didn't know the money was stolen, but the recordings prove otherwise. She'll likely face conspiracy charges. Melinda nodded with satisfaction. Trevor and Natasha had planned to build their happiness on her pain. Now they would both pay the price for their cruelty. The financial recovery was even better than expected. James had managed to freeze and recover not just the $40,000 Trevor had stolen, but also the interest and investments he'd made with her money. All told, you're getting back about $60,000, James reported. Plus the court awarded significant damages for emotional distress and punitive measures. Trevor owes you $250,000 he'll never be able to pay. What happens when he gets out of prison with no money and no prospects? That's his problem, James said grimly. Maybe he should have thought about that before he decided to steal from someone who trusted him. But the most satisfying part of the aftermath was watching Trevor's reputation crumble completely. His story spread through social media, warning other women about predatory men who used romance to commit financial fraud. Trevor's name became synonymous with betrayal and theft. His family disowned him completely. His mother had been humiliated by the revelation that she'd been recorded encouraging her son's crimes, and his father refused to post bail or hire lawyers. Trevor sat in jail for months before his trial, abandoned by everyone who had once loved him. His co-workers made sure he was blacklisted from every marketing firm in the city. His college friends publicly distanced themselves from him. Even his neighbors moved away rather than be associated with the building where a criminal had lived. Trevor's complete social destruction was as thorough as his legal destruction. Meanwhile, Melinda's life was flourishing in ways she'd never expected. With Trevor's poisonous influence removed, she found herself thinking more clearly, working more effectively, and feeling more confident than she had in years. She used some of the recovered money to start her own consulting business, specializing in financial analysis for small businesses. Within months, she was busier than she'd ever been and happier than she'd been since before she met Trevor. But the best part was the relationships she built with other women who had been through similar experiences. The news coverage had brought dozens of women forward with their own stories of financial abuse and romantic fraud. Melinda started a support group for survivors of financial abuse, helping other women recognize the warning signs and protect themselves from predatory partners. It gave her a sense of purpose that went far beyond her personal revenge. "You saved my life," one woman told her at a support group meeting. "If I hadn't seen your story on the news, I never would have realized my boyfriend was stealing from me too." Those were the moments that made everything worthwhile. Trevor's destruction was satisfying, but helping other women avoid her fate was meaningful. 6 months after Trevor's arrest, Melinda ran into his mother at the grocery store. The older woman looked haggard and ashamed, aged years in just a few months. "Melinda," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology." "Yes," Melinda replied simply. "You do. I was wrong to laugh at you. Wrong to encourage Trevor's lies. I didn't understand how much pain we were causing." "You understood enough," Melinda said. "You knew Trevor was using me and you thought it was funny because you didn't see me as a real person. You saw me as a convenient source of money for your son." Trevor's mother started crying. "He's my son. I wanted him to be happy." "At my expense," Melinda pointed out. "You wanted him to be happy using my money while breaking my heart." I know, and I'm sorry. We lost everything too, you know. Our reputation, our friends, our community standing. Trevor destroyed our family." "No," Melinda corrected. "You destroyed your family when you raised a son who thought stealing and lying were acceptable. Trevor destroyed himself when he chose to be a criminal." She walked away, leaving Trevor's mother crying in the grocery store aisle. Melinda felt no satisfaction in the woman's pain, but she felt no sympathy either. Actions had consequences and the Patterson family was finally facing theirs. That evening, Melinda sat in her apartment, the same apartment where Trevor had once planned their fake wedding, and reflected on how much her life had changed. A year ago she had been naive, trusting, and generous to a fault. She had believed in love, in honesty, in the goodness of people. Trevor had tried to destroy all of that. Instead, he had made her stronger, smarter, and more resilient. She was still generous, but now she was careful about who deserved her generosity. She still believed in love, but now she knew the difference between real love and manipulation. Most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the only way to protect yourself was to fight back. Trevor had wanted to use her as a stepping stone to his dreams. Instead, he had become a stepping stone to hers. As she looked around her apartment, now redecorated and refurnished to reflect her new life, Melinda smiled. Trevor was in prison, facing years of consequences for his crimes. Natasha was facing her own legal troubles and social destruction. And Melinda? Melinda was free, successful, and surrounded by people who actually cared about her. Trevor had taught her a valuable lesson. Not everyone who claims to love you actually does. But Melinda had taught him an even more valuable lesson. Underestimating the wrong woman could cost you everything. 1 year later, Melinda stood in the conference room of her own consulting firm, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her business had grown beyond her wildest dreams, and she now employed 12 people helping small businesses with financial planning and fraud prevention. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Melinda? There's someone here to see you. Says his name is Marcus and he's from the Department of Justice." Melinda smiled and nodded for him to be sent in. She'd been expecting this visit. Marcus was a federal prosecutor who had been working on a larger investigation into financial fraud schemes. Trevor's case had led them to a network of men who used romance to commit theft, and they wanted Melinda's help identifying patterns and warning signs. "Ms. Williams," Marcus said as he entered her office, "thank you for agreeing to consult on these cases. Your documentation in the Patterson case was extraordinary." "Thank you," Melinda replied, gesturing for him to sit. "I'm happy to help protect other women from what I went through." They spent an hour reviewing files of similar cases, and Melinda was struck by how familiar the patterns were. Men who isolated their victims, who created false emergencies to request money, who maintained double lives while draining their partner's resources. "The good news," Marcus said as they wrapped up, "is that your case has become a template for prosecution. We're seeing much higher conviction rates now that we know what to look for." After Marcus left, Melinda returned to her window view of the city. In the distance, she could see the federal courthouse where Trevor was serving his sentence. The same building where Natasha had been sentenced to 3 years for conspiracy and fraud. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boyfriend Daniel, a kind and honest man she'd met through her support group work. He was a therapist who specialized in helping fraud victims rebuild their lives, and they bonded over their shared commitment to helping others heal from financial abuse. "How did the DOJ meeting go?" his text read. "Very well," she replied. "They want me to consult on more cases. I think I'm going to say yes." "I'm proud of you," came his immediate response. "You've turned your pain into purpose." That evening, Daniel took her to dinner at a small restaurant across town. As they sat together talking about their plans for the weekend, Melinda reflected on how different this relationship was from her time with Trevor. Daniel was transparent about his finances, never asked her for money, and actively encouraged her business success. He supported her work with other fraud victims and celebrated her achievements without trying to take credit. Most importantly, he saw her as a full person rather than a convenient resource. "I have something to tell you," Daniel said as they finished their meal. "I got a letter from the prison today. Trevor is asking to see me." Melinda looked up sharply. "He wants therapy?" "Apparently. His lawyer thinks it might help with early parole consideration if he can show he's working on his issues." "Are you going to see him?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Only if you're okay with it. I wouldn't want to do anything that might upset you." This was another difference between Daniel and Trevor. Daniel considered her feelings and asked for her opinion rather than making unilateral decisions and expecting her to go along with them. "I think you should see him," Melinda said finally. "Not for his sake but for your research. Understanding how men like Trevor think could help you help other victims." Daniel smiled and reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "You never stop thinking about helping others, do you?" "I learned something important from what Trevor did to me," Melinda replied. "Bad things happen to good people, but good people don't have to let bad things destroy them. We can choose to use our experiences to help others." A week later, Daniel came back from his session with Trevor with disturbing but not surprising news. "He still doesn't think he did anything really wrong," Daniel reported. He keeps saying it was just relationship drama that got blown out of proportion. He thinks you were vindictive for pressing charges. Of course he does, Melinda said without surprise. Men like Trevor never accept responsibility for their actions. They always find a way to make themselves the victim. He asked about you, Daniel continued. Wanted to know if you were happy if you'd moved on. I think he was hoping to hear that you were miserable without him. What did you tell him? The truth. That you're successful, happy, and helping other women avoid men like him. He didn't like that at all. Melinda wasn't surprised. Trevor's ego couldn't handle the idea that she had thrived without him while he had lost everything. The narrative he'd constructed in his mind probably cast him as the wronged party and her as the crazy ex who had overreacted. But Melinda didn't care what Trevor thought anymore. His opinion had no power over her life. What mattered was the letter she received that same week from a woman named Sarah who had attended one of her support group meetings. Dear Melinda, the letter read, I wanted you to know that your story saved me from a man who was stealing from me exactly the way Trevor stole from you. When I heard you speak about the warning signs, I realized my boyfriend was following the same playbook. I confronted him with evidence, and he confessed to taking almost $20,000 from me over 8 months. Because of your advice, I was able to recover most of the money and get him prosecuted. He's now in jail and I'm rebuilding my life. Thank you for turning your pain into protection for other women. Letters like Sarah's arrived regularly now. Women who had recognized predatory patterns because of Melinda's story. Women who had found the courage to fight back because they'd seen her do it successfully. Women who had avoided financial abuse entirely because they'd learned the warning signs. Each letter was a victory that went far beyond her personal revenge against Trevor. On the 1-year anniversary of Trevor's arrest, Melinda threw a party not to celebrate his destruction, but to celebrate her new life. Her employees, her support group members, Daniel and several other friends gathered in her apartment to toast her success and resilience. A year ago, Melinda said, raising her glass to the room, I thought my life was over. I thought losing Trevor meant losing everything that mattered. But I learned something important. When someone tries to destroy you, the best revenge is building a life so good that their opinion becomes irrelevant. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Melinda and Daniel sat on her balcony looking out at the city lights. Do you ever regret how you handled things with Trevor? Daniel asked. Some people might say you were too harsh. Melinda considered the question seriously. No, she said finally. Trevor spent 2 years planning to destroy my life and steal my future. He got exactly what he deserved. And because I fought back, other women have been protected from men like him. No regrets at all? Only one, Melinda said with a smile. I regret that it took me so long to realize how much better my life could be without him. As she sat there with a man who actually loved and respected her, surrounded by the success she'd built from the ashes of Trevor's betrayal, Melinda felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge. Trevor had wanted to use her as a stepping stone to happiness with another woman. Instead, she had used his betrayal as a stepping stone to a happiness he could never have imagined or stolen. He was in prison, disowned by his family, abandoned by his friends, and facing years of consequences for his crimes. She was free, successful, loved, and using her experience to protect other women. In the end, the walking ATM had dispensed the most expensive lesson of Trevor's life. Some women fight back, and when they do, they don't just win. They dominate.